The city slept with one ear open. The ear was the bay. It listened to engines that had not yet been built, to bells that were not hung. The water was wine-dark and unpoured. Then it creased. A seam unzipped across the Tyrrhenian, and out slid a hull that drank light like cooled lava. The name on the bow did not say Napoli. It said silence, pronounced in ash. The sea leaned back. The ship wore a skin like basalt. Matte. Star-swallowing. You could look at it and forget the sun had a job. Numbers along the plates blinked like embers under scoria. Her wake advanced in front of her, a black ribbon combed by invisible wind. Gun muzzles inhaled salt and returned it as prayer. Paint is usually a costume. On this hull the camo was a verdict. Night livery poured from funnels as if pigment were smoke and smoke were instruction. Black spread over the superstructure in patient veins, joining and parting like streets mapped by a careful god. Where it went, metal remembered volcano. Welds pulsed. Rivets clicked like beads in an old rosary. Somewhere inside, a bell tolled without clapper. The note was low and steady. It counted something no chart included. The basalt skin learned texture. It grew small hexagons like columns born fast. Each cell held a memory of heat. A rain of pumice fell from a clear sky and dissolved before landing. The railings collected constellations as if the city's silent laundry were hung there. Crew assembled. Not men. Uniforms cut from shadow and stitched with salt. Their faces were alleys in summer. Their eyes were wire-strung balconies without voices. They moved by ritual. They checked gauges that showed pressure inside time. They passed a chipped espresso cup from hand to hand. It was empty. The cup steamed anyway. Guns elevated to meet something that was not sky. A pressure. The barrels tracked a procession of invisible impacts walking like saints across the fog. Shell casings appeared, warm, engraved with streets not yet real. A rangefinder swept the horizon and saw teeth. Sirens in the city answered the ship's unheard whistle. The answers were not alarms. They were harmonics. A cathedral of spray climbed, stalled, and faced the ship as if to be blessed. When the first salvo left, it left the sea behind it folded like linen. Fire bloomed orange, then cooled to obsidian midair and fell as harmless glass birds. They perched along the boat cranes and clicked their beaks. The clicks were coordinates. Down in the water, old war wandered by in sleep. Depth-charge ghosts rolled and turned like lunar fields. A torpedo wake crossed the ship's bow and wrote a sentence in a language not even the smoke understood. The sentence ended in a comma and swam away. The bridge kept quiet. The captain's chair held a coat with epaulets of nightfall. In the pocket, a small volcanic stone. Warm. Used as a compass. The helmsman was a shadow tied to a wheel. He turned 2 degrees toward Via Toledo and 2 degrees toward whatever lived beneath Via Toledo in myth. The navigator wrote on a chart with chalk. Chalk refused the paper and wrote in the air. The line hung like a clothesline and did not sag. Mess smells were oregano, cordite, and thunder. A radio operator tuned a band labeled Quartieri. In the headphones, footsteps over wet cobbles. Laughter behind shutters. A window slammed and became a depth reading. Below the keel, something hummed back the melody of a market opening at dawn. A priest with a wrench tightened a valve. He made the sign of the cross with grease and salt. The sign stayed in the air and rotated like a radar platform. On deck, a bosun's call blew into a wineglass and became a standing wave. Beside turret 1, a woman made of smoke and choir notes stared at the shoreline. She adjusted nothing. At midnight that arrived at noon, Vesuvius woke without eruption. The mountain shifted its attention. The slope was an islet. It opened. Lamps along the Lungomare leaned seaward. The bay rose on a hinge and revealed the second city that lives below water. Streets matched streets. Domes met domes. The lower city was built of cooled thunder and coins. It had waited for someone to knock. Napoli knocked. Her hull rang basalt on basalt. The note bridged the 2 cities. The lower one unlatched. Water became staircase. The ship descended without moving. On the surface she slid forward. Below, she walked stone treads wearing the weight of a procession. Bells under the bay tolled backwards. Fish gathered like confession. Shells left the guns and did not arc. They translated sideways into avenues of air. One lodged in a shadow at the edge of a plaza no one has ever found. The shadow grew a little shorter. One punctured a rumor and let out a weather. The weather smelled of burnt sugar and iron rain. One never landed. It chose to become a silent constellation over the bridge, 7 cold points arranged like a vow. A crack opened under the keel. Not danger. Door. The sea showed the grammar it uses when talking to rocks. The hinges were storms. The latch was a sentry. The lock turned. Inside was a corridor where time went to be blessed. The ship entered. The corridor narrowed until paint touched shadow and learned a new word for black. Orders arrived unspoken. The city wrote them on the bay with reflections. The reflection of Castel dell'Ovo lengthened and broke into syllables. It told the ship, hold the line where maps end. Guard the dream that balances the day. If an enemy comes as silence, answer with stone. The crew obeyed. Lines cast themselves ashore and tied to rings that were not there yesterday. A saint statue in a niche turned slightly toward the water and looked at the ship with the patience of basalt and the impatience of music. The ship looked back with the expression of a quay at dawn. In the chart room, chalk dots pulsed. Each dot was a doorway into a memory the city has not lived yet. A child will run laughing on cobbles after the rain. The laugh will echo. The echo will arrive here below deck and set a metronome. When the metronome stops, the guns will elevate. No target. Only the discipline of rhythm. The barrels will hum. The city will sleep deeply that night. The black skin softened to satin. It rejected starlight and accepted moon. The hull reflected nothing but offered a place for the eye to rest. People on the seawall looked and forgot what they were about to say. Lovers paused and set the argument down. A waiter stopped with a tray and watched the water reverse direction twice. The coin in his pocket warmed. 3 times a siren sang. Not warning. Saying we are still here. Saying, the sea is a library of nights. Saying, every harbor is a mouth that can speak law. The tone rolled across the flat water like oil. It reached the cliff road and touched old stone. Napoli did not depart. She advanced into a lane of water that moved toward her. The wake led. The bow followed. The city watched itself steady in her hull's unmirror. Bells counted a number between numbers. The mountain closed its eye again, not asleep, just thinking. Down below, the second city breathed out and let the stairs refill with tide. The door stayed unlocked. The name on the bow meant what it had always meant. A promise tied to a coast with chain thin as a whisper and strong as a century. Paint dried. The basalt cooled. The ship waited for a silence that would come wearing another color. When it arrives, the guns will not need permission. The bay listens.